Welcome back, recruits. I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and we are here today to show you how to replace your HasLab stock motherboard with the Redman Studio motherboard. Let's get going. This is the Redman Studio motherboard, full aluminum. It ran Greg 175 for this full board with already painted, all of the holes already drilled through it.
This was model number ALH4, for those who are wondering.
Yeah.
Because the model numbers get confusing on his website too.
And then, of course, you see he's serialized it and given Greg the whole sticker too, so you can pull this and stick it wherever he wants on the pack if he wants to use it. Which is a nice little touch. I like that. First step with all of these, especially these major retrofits to the pack, we got to take the motherboard off. Already seen me do that a couple of times, guys. There's a video of it. Redman Studio very helpfully has a PDF that you can download that'll explain all of these steps, everything that you need to do and need to know, and what exactly all the parts you have are. I went ahead and printed off a copy just so we would have it right here at the workbench. Now that we've got the actual motherboard off, first step is going to be to take the beam line and the filler tube, and you'll notice that I saved their screws because we're going to take a couple of washers and basically just reattach them directly from inside the shell like you would with a full scale, with a Hero Proton pack. That's our first step here, just kind of removing points of attachment that are sort of integral to the HasLab shell, to the HasLab motherboard. That's the wrong spot. So I have the pack flipped up on its side so I can get access to the front and hold the beam line down in place. And now I have the actual mounting screw with a little washer to help hold it.
That came with the kit, right?
The washer came with the kit. I'm using the stock screw. So I actually kept the screws for these two pieces, and the washers came with the kit. Flipped it up on its side, turned it around one way, then turned it back around the other way. Like I said, just kind of throwing this pack around wherever we need it to be to get access to what we need access to. So the washers are just expanding the profile of the screw head. If I take one and off, you can see, so these are the two mounting holes for these two parts. That screw is not going to work. And because these are basically plastic pieces with their own sort of built-in sprue, we really kind of want to stick to the hardware that already exists, because modifying that is going to be just a massive pain.
And you don't have to worry about removing them now. We're just letting him take the backboard off either.
No, they are now fully attached to the pack itself, and honestly, both are basically just like a lot of the details that you actually see on the outside of the Proton pack. Both of these tubes are basically just cosmetic detailing. They don't really, yeah, they don't serve a purpose. In terms of the actual props mechanics, they don't really serve a purpose. They have no wiring, they have no electronic elements to them. They're cosmetic. So you can be a little willy-nilly with them, and as long as they're on there. And actually, Greg, you'll notice,
Yeah.
it is much, well, it's no wiggle anymore. Remember how that part was wiggly before?
That is much, much better.
Much, much better. Next step, take out these 4 screws on the bottom. Now, on a Hero Proton pack, these screws are actually right where you would have your actual mounting brackets, which are pretty similar to how the Redman Mobo comes together as well. So you'll get kind of a hint of sort of how a Hero Proton pack attaches to its motherboard. Those boys aside. Nifty little detail I've never noticed on my own until reading through the Redman motherboard installation instructions here. See that little hole? So that hole is in the correct position for a motherboard bracket. That is a pre-existing hole that is unused on the HasLab pack shell. Hasbro actually thought of us. They were like, hey, these guys are going to want to put a motherboard on these things, so we should make it accessible for them. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm just taking a second here to sort of tape down the wiring that we put in for your custom wand connector. just to keep it out of the way. Just pulling tape out of my magic bag. If you're not fully disassembling something and isolating the parts, like I'm not really pulling everything completely apart here. If I was, I would be a lot less careful with my wiring and stuff. So it's still good. It's still in here. It's still kind of in the way. So I'm just kind of taking some safety measures to make sure that nothing gets damaged during the process of drilling holes here. We've got these 4 screws out. Next step here is to open it up to a 3/16 size hole. Now to do that, 3/16. There it is. You can kind of see from the outside, he wants you to open these 2 holes, these 2 holes, and then this hole, all up to 3/16. I definitely recommend, this is a point where you really want to stop and look at it from the inside and make sure that you do not have anything that you don't want damaged in the way, because drill bits cut. And they will cut straight through wiring as easily as they will through the plastic. All I'm doing is just kind of bracing the whole thing. Make sure your hand is not behind the hole where you're drilling. All right. Not a lot of material that needs to be taken away, as you can see. It your drill bit should pop right through, and then you want to just take a quick second to sort of let it keep working and clean up the hole and get everything a nice even diameter, basically. We've got wiring behind here isolated and out of the way. I'm once again taking my 3/16 and got the pack up on its side. It's not as stable as I would like it to be, but once again, make sure your offhand is not behind the hole where your drill bit is going to go. And okay, holes drilled. Now that we have our screw holes opened up to 3/16, what we want to do is we're going to take these little square spacers. I don't know how well you can see on camera, but they have just a slight angle to them, and that's to allow them to slot into the panels behind the shell here, where we're going to be mounting our screws. And these guys are going to kind of act as sort of an extra little washer pressure plate thing to help support the weight of the pack. So we're going to do red side outwards with the skinny side slotting up towards the cyclotron. I'm just going to use this 3/16 to sit in the hole and hold it in place for a second for me. He's given us some nice supplied hardware here. It's all pretty straightforward stuff. Most of this is all the same threaded little hex drive screws. He did include these nice little brass washers, which is a nice little touch. I like those. They're a little bit harder to find in some places, and they just kind of add a little element of interesting detail. You know, you may be asking yourself, Chris, how do I get the nut behind there if there's no room inside the pack shell for my hand? We're going to take a pair of needle nose pliers. We're going to hold our nut in place. Start at the top, because you will not be able to get to the bottom, or to the top, if the bottom is already in place. So, let me reset. Just to make my life a little bit easier, I went ahead and flipped it over on its face. So that way I can actually get some light down in this channel where I want it. Once again, just pinning the backing plate into place with that screw. Then I'm going to take that, and probably have to, if you're using the screw kind of to pin the plate in place like I am, you're probably going to have to back it off to give yourself enough room to get the nut in there. Gregory, I just want you to recognize the amount of restraint I'm having with the word nut. So the nut is started on the thread and on there. It's now kind of holding everything in place, but obviously it's not very well tightened down. Let me hold one up so you can see. These are what's called a nylon stop nut. Now they're called a nylon stop nut because they have this little plastic insert in the back. See that white ring in the back of the nut? So that is a little piece of nylon plastic that's inserted directly behind the threading of the nut. So once the screw passes through the threads and gets to the nylon part, it locks in. The nylon has much more friction than the threading itself alone does. So basically what's happening here is it's now providing enough resistance that I'm going to have to you're really going to have to get a good grip with your needle nose pliers. I'm mostly making a point of this so people know that it's going to be really stiff and difficult at this point because they're basically threading into the nylon. You can hear my
Will it feel like it's gonna break? Is that what it feels like?
a little bit, yeah. It feels almost like you're going to break something. Trust me, you're not. It is made to do this. That said, you'll probably want to get better leverage. So once it does start to tighten up, though, it should be a little bit easier because things won't want to drift on me nearly as much. And voila, there's one. So the step we're on here is 5C. I just want to highlight while we're here that Redman specifically, what we're doing right now is just kind of cosmetic screw add-ons. The screws that are actually going to be used for the mounting brackets are these lower ones that are closer to the board. These upper ones are the ones that you want to put screws in on this step. Right now, these are just fillers. Second part here, same as the first. We're slotting the bracket in. And then just using the screw to kind of hold the whole bracket and stuff in place while I get my pliers with the stop nut in. And then this side is a lot easier because we don't have this tube from the end filter to contend with. We just have a lot more open space to work with. And once again, I am already down to the nylon, so I'm gonna swap over to more leverage.
Okay.
There we go. All right. We are up to step 6 on the Redman Mobo instructions, if you're following along. This is the step that is a little bit more difficult for a lot of folks, and I understand why, because I'm probably going to struggle a little bit with it as well. Redman has helpfully provided a little printed off template. Now, we want to trim it down on the dotted line, of course, and then he gives us sort of instructions on placement here. But if you are looking, it's going to end up in here, like right around there. That's where we need to drill our hole. And once again, we have working electronics that are in the way, so we're gonna have to take a few moments here to kind of figure out how we want to do it. Definitely gonna start by isolating some wires. So by this point, faithful viewers, you're probably noticing that I'm including a magic secret ingredient to this whole process that Redman doesn't mention at all in his installation instructions. And it's a lot of tape. You can see all the tape that I've been using so far, just random strips of electrical tape to hold wire out of the way. And that, just to kind of isolate things as much as possible. He includes a little printed off template for you with the kit. That's the one we're going to go ahead and use. Okay, so for most of you, it's been a few years since arts and crafts projects in school. I am personally very methodical when it comes to these sorts of things. So this is a good moment for me to bring out one of my dad's old adages. It's
It's a lot easier to trim to than it is to add. Which is to say, you'll notice that I started by just taking off the bulk and slowly working my way into the line. And that is, when you've got something like this, that's probably the best, safest approach. When you're cutting with scissors, in order to get a nice even cut so you don't end up with a bunch of jagged lines on your cut, the trick is to not keep closing as you go.
One long.
One long cut, basically. I'm gonna do a little bit more tape. In this case, I'm actually gonna take some clear Scotch tape. This is the most intricate thing I've done. So, once again, take your time. Get your template lined up as close as you possibly can before you really stick it down. Like so. And I'm actually going to take another little piece. I really dislike it when parts wander while I drill. And it has been my experience with a paper template. They are very, very, very guilty of wanting to wander if you don't secure them really, really tightly. So if I seem like I'm being kind of overkill with my tape here, I am. You'll notice specifically that I'm having to angle the drill out of the shell here. And you can even see in the instructions that that's exactly what Redman does on his as well, as he just angles the chuck up out. Now bear in mind when you go, see if I can get it going slow enough for you to see, but this whole surface, the chuck, is gonna move. So, and that's definitely gonna spoil your aim, basically. If you are fully resting the chuck here, it's gonna wanna do that, right? So, the idea is you wanna get your point set, apply enough downward pressure that it doesn't wander on you too much, and then lift your chuck up off the shell edge. Now, once again, careful with your offhand. I hate doing angles like this. Always wants to drift. Okay. Hole is in. I am going to do some little trickery here. And hopefully that'll do.
Now we've got our bracket hole placed. You'll notice while I was drilling it, I kind of had to start and stop repeatedly. And what I was doing, what was happening was the drill bit kept wanting to wander downwards. And as soon as I saw that, I kept stopping and correcting until finally I had enough downward pressure and enough of like a little divot in the surface that the drill bit didn't want to wander off on me. So if you don't feel like you have to do it in one clean punch through, it can be a little bit of a process, kind of finding the spot and keeping it there, and applying enough pressure in equal amounts in equal directions to get it to stay where you want it to be. You'll see as part of the kit here, Redman includes 4 brackets. Those are going to be your actual mounting points for the shell to the motherboard. They're going to go here and here, here, and here. The only one that is different is the B bracket. He's helpfully labeled that, and that one is actually going to go down here, and it needs to go there because it has the correct offsetting to get clearance on stuff. Now that I've got pass through, I just put that screw there. I'm actually going to go ahead and leave that for a second because I don't think I need to do a whole heck of a lot to get it started. There, it started. That's just one of the set of little 3/16 Allen drive screws with another little brass washer. Now that we've got it tightened down where we can kind of move it around and stuff,
The position it's going to end up fully tightened down in is this. So you'll notice that it's slotted all the way towards the power cell wall, and with the bracket wall facing you towards where the motherboard will be. So with it held like that, this is going to get a little fiddly, actually. So obviously you can do it with needle nose pliers. That is the recommended tool for this. I just happen to have some of this stuff handy, so. And in fact, for this final bit, you really are going to need so there is that bracket solidly in place, you can see. So combination of 3/8 socket driver and needle nose pliers got it in there and where we want it. I like the socket driver, but if you just have needle nose pliers, those are definitely going to work. So the board that was originally sent was the overlay board, which is actually meant to fit over top of the original HasLab instead of replacing it completely. The biggest problem was it was missing some very key some very key hole placements for the mounting brackets that we really couldn't just do ourselves. Theoretically, one of us could have printed out like a full-scale 1-to-1 template and laid it over the board that was sent, but I don't have a drill press, so it's kind of tough to be super duper precise like you sort of need to be with the bracket alignment that's going in.
Yeah, like pinpoint accuracy. Like
Yeah.
it was like I talked to Danny about that when he said the replacement. He said that it's just better if he sends us a new board because it's so precise. If we're off by just like a fraction of a millimeter, it will not work. But Danny sent us a new board quickly and efficiently, and I didn't have to pay for shipping. It was all great.
It was very awesome. Yes. Huge shout out to Danny. Redman Workshop Studios, if I recall correctly. Excellent products. It's just bear in mind, he's a very popular seller, so sometimes things get overwhelmed. Just be patient with him, because he will do right by you. But where we were at was on step 8, which is installing our own little cyclotron bolt. So when you take apart the actual HasLab motherboard, one of the big things that you'll notice is there's one big bolt that runs through the middle of the cyclotron, and that's what the cyclotron interior that comes with the HasLab actually mounts onto and screws into. And it sort of acts as another post all the way through the whole pack. 3/16 hex drive. Because I do not know, this is the only one of Redman's motherboards that I've ever handled besides the other one, the overlay one. So I do not know if this is true for all of them, but the hole for the cyclotron bolt is tight enough that you're going to need to use, you're going to need to actually drive it through with the threading. Just a really tight clearance. It's not even really like properly threaded or anything. So like really I could do that, which would be faster. And flip this guy over and go. Bam. If you're following along on Redman's instructions, we are in step 9. These are a couple of cosmetic screws.
Oh, those screws serve no purpose other than being cosmetic?
Correct. There it goes. It might be easier to do what I just did to kind of get it started. I literally just used finger force to kind of get that first thread to bite. Because you're really not supposed to do this. You can get away with it because it is a hardened steel screw on aluminum that's relatively thin. But yeah, see You can see from the swing of my wrench here.
It's not even, but that's okay.
I'm gonna
just
do the same.
cosmetic.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did with that first one though, and just drive it down as flush as possible. Yes, they are just cosmetic, which is why I don't mind over-wrenching them like that. You also shouldn't do that, because that's a good way to strip out the threads that you just put in there and make your hole too big. But if you are careful, like I was, you'll notice on that very last one, what I did was I stopped and looked at where my wrench was and then gave it one full rotation from there. Yeah, so it drives it nice and flat there. This is just the battery cover, and we're doing the exact same thing as before, but we're kind of adding the extra layer of having to lay down the battery cover itself over the holes.
We're gonna drill a big hole through this anyway, so the USB can pop out. So,
Are we?
we don't. I mean, it's up to you.
Don't have to.
People don't like when we destroy the pack.
All right, so quite literally, same thing as before. You can see all of our hardware mounted through. Step 10 is once we lay these, and the other thing is he has these, I believe I showed earlier, these nylon stop nuts. So I'm just gonna leave them loose right now. I'm not even really gonna get it all the way down to the nylon yet. He recommends doing that. But once that's all mounted up correctly, what we're gonna end up with are 4 brackets, 2 up top and 2 down below. B is the only one that is not interchangeable. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I put that one in its correct place right now. That's how we do. Except just to be able to cut together a quick shot of me doing 4 of these. Danny Redman of Redman Studio Workshop. So make sure we get those shout outs in there. He has a couple of different options for the way the hardware is set up on these boards for the replacement board. Now, Greg has chosen the HasLab mounting, so it effectively uses the mounting hardware that came with your HasLab pack to replace the motherboard. That said, if you have, like us, taken your HasLab pack apart and looked at the inside of the motherboard, what you will notice is where your actual hardware is mounting to on this board are these inset nuts. I'm gonna have to do some damage.
Now you could theoretically go to the store and get nuts too as an option
Yes,
as well.
so this is all standard metric hardware. You could theoretically just go to your hardware store and find matching hardware to use. You don't necessarily have to destroy your motherboard. If you want to keep this intact for whatever reason, I figure we're here already, so I'm gonna drill a big hole in it. Let me see if I can do something kind of clever here. So. So, I just took the actual screw that's used to mount on the other, that's actually used for the Alice hardware that comes with it. And because the easiest way to get leverage on these and pull them out is to have a center post in the middle. Now you could use like a screwdriver or something like that, but I don't know what material these nuts are made out of.
It's the cheapest material possible. Just,
Exactly.
Yeah, so be careful. Yeah.
Exactly. So to protect the threading in there, I'm taking the actual bolt, I'm getting it screwed in nice and firm, right? And then using that to yank it out.
Is it easier to go to the store to get them? Absolutely. But this is equally effective too. And we get to destroy stuff on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
The hammer is what gets the views.
The hammer is what gets the views. All right. So once again, just using the existing screw from the HasLab mounting hardware as my little lever to just plug in. Slightly harder to lose the matching nut to your bolt if you have it screwed to the bolt. So that way, if you lose something, you lose everything.
That's better, right?
Yeah.
And one more here. I've now shown you guys how you can just scavenge all of the hardware from the original motherboard. You don't necessarily have to do all of that struggle. If you just want to take one of your bolts to your local hardware store, a lot of them have these little display things that have a bunch of different threaded screws and nuts where you can just literally take your bolt and test it and find out what thread it is. That said, and I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to come up with this for me, I know that these are a standard metric thread and I believe they are an M3, but don't quote me on that. We have Greg's replica Rothko brand Alice frame. I am not the biggest fan of these particular frames. I don't think they are quite as sturdy as the vintage ones. However, not everybody wants to go on eBay and spend $120. So this is what we're doing.
And for those of you watching, this is how, when you replace the backboard, this is how it's going to operate now. When you take the backboard off, the Alice frame comes off with it now.
Yes.
So you don't have to remove the Alice frame and then the board like you do in the original hardware. The whole thing's going to be one piece that you remove altogether.
Yes, correct. Once you have all of your frame bolts attached, let's see.
Oh, and mention why you're leaving this one blank.
Oh, so simply put, you saw me struggling with retrieving the stock hardware. There was one set of nuts that we weren't able to retrieve from the stock motherboard. That said, we are still mounted here, here, and here. So I feel pretty good about this being really solidly on there. I don't think it's gonna fall off your frame. So if you're following along with the instructions with us, we've just skipped steps 11, 12, and 13. That is in regards to using the hero mounting method. This is the stock HasLab hardware mounting method. I think this is a little bit cleaner and requires probably a little bit less major modification. I know people tend to prefer not to put holes in things with drills. The hero mounting method does require that you drill at least one hole. However, the HasLab mounting method doesn't require any holes drilled in the board. We've already shown you where to drill your holes, and that's entirely pack side. Now we gotta attach this to the pack. And first and foremost, what I need to do, where I want to start, so the bracket that I'm going to start with, making sure, or tinkering with to get it into alignment, is the B bracket, the one that is explicitly marked out. That is the one that we know is going to be the most kind of fiddly. We actually showed this earlier on when I did the mounting for all of this to begin with, but bear in mind one of your brackets is not going to mount directly to the motherboard. It's actually going to mount inside the shell here. And then once it is mounted into place like so, it's going to match up to your motherboard and you're going to mount into the nut. We're running into a physical problem here. This wall, which is sort of an interior wall space of the N filter, is in the way of our bracket. So I'm just gonna go ahead and Dremel it. And we're being safe.
It looks like Danny accidentally sent us a non-trimmed bracket because they all look identical in terms of the brackets. B is supposed to be slightly trimmed. It wasn't, so we have to Dremel all of this out so it fits the bracket. Mistakes happen. It's okay. This is cool to get on video anyway. Go ahead, Chris.
We finally made it. Yeah, really, as Greg mentioned, it took
a good couple hours actually of actually tweaking the brackets in tiny little increments back and forth to get them to match up with their mounting holes. But then as you go forward, so I could actually walk you through, we started here, up here underneath the gun hook. That was the first bracket I mounted onto the board, and that went pretty easy, but it was just the one bracket, and it matched up with our hidden bracket pretty quickly and easily. However, once I started to move forward and tried to move to this bracket, it became a whole nother kettle of fish, and I was suddenly really fighting to keep this one and this one in full alignment, not to mention getting that one in full alignment. And then moving forward to that third bracket, so each sequential bracket, like you're really stopping and checking and realigning all of the previous brackets as well as the one that you're adding. The big kind of breakthrough was finally getting the shell to sit flush to the motherboard first with all of the brackets where they're supposed to sit. Pretty close to where they're supposed to sit. I understand there's been a little bit of kerfuffle on Redman Studio side with this round of orders where they've had some issues with their brackets and their boards. We definitely had some problems with the board. I did do a little bit of tweaking on the brackets insofar as I ended up filing the corner down on the B bracket, which would be this bracket here by the injector tube cyclotron block, in case you want to know what this part is called. That was a little bit of an issue, but I got there, and then once I really had that in, I was able to get all of the others into alignment with a couple of little tweaks from there, and that was largely just kind of putting the shell in place, lean over, look to see where the hole is in relation to where the bracket is, tweak where the bracket is sitting accordingly, pick it back up, do it all over again until I had everything close enough that it could align. And now, I can do that. And, dude, this thing is stable. We actually, I think I mentioned before, we did not use all of the brackets. We used 4 out of the 5 brackets, and this thing is still super steady. The only thing that I feel wiggling is the frame itself, and the only way to fix that is to get Greg a vintage frame. The big thing really, and this was something that we had to figure out midstream, and you will notice pops up sort of towards the end of my footage of struggle. And this is something that Danny was able to point out to Greg on Messenger as we were working here, is if you have your spacer piece, this little gray rubber piece that fits onto your cyclotron post, if you have that in place when you match the shell to the motherboard, it does a lot to really help force the alignment into correct place down here, so you have a little bit less to worry about in alignment up top, because otherwise you're constantly trying to fight the back and forth. And that is how you install the Redman Studio Workshop motherboard, Hero motherboard replacement. Not the overlay, but the Hero replacement board. Now, obviously, Greg went with the version of that board that has holes for mounting using the stock HasLab hardware. However, if you're using Danny's other version, which is the Hero mounting method, the only thing that you really have to do different is you just drill 1 hole. So, and it's on the frame too, so you don't even have to put any holes in your pack. This was model ALH4. Thank you for watching, guys. Please check out Danny's website. It's going to be in the links below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and please leave comments. I'm always lurking in there on my own personal YouTube account, so...
This was definitely the most difficult mod Chris and I have ever done.
This is the most difficult out of the HasLab mods that we've done so far, yes. And we'll be back soon with some more Frozen Empire Proton Pack content.